Hi and welcome to another of our after hours conversations here at the Copperberg Power of 50 discussions. And today we've been focused very heavily around the spare parts part of the industry. As always, my job is really easy. I get to talk to people that are a wee bit smarter than me, that have spent the day shaping conversations, bringing these thoughts together, and we bring 50 industry leaders together and we bring some of the key companies working alongside those. As always, I ask my guests, Andreas, I'm going to ask you to do it. The first thing is to tell our audience at home a little bit about yourself and Baxter Planning.
Thank you. My name is Andreas Grundsell. I'm the VP of Commercial Operations for Baxter Planning here in EMEA. Baxter Planning is a software company specialized in spare parts planning, execution and escalation management.
Brilliant. So, as I said at the top there, we've had... I always feel that these are great days, intensive days, but yes. Great days.
Very intense.
Yeah, and there's some fantastic conversations that have been going on. I have the joy of walking around, learning from osmosis in many instances. Talk to us a little bit about the conversations that you were having. I suppose the first thing I'd ask is, what was the conversation you felt you need to bring in? Because you guys are specialists in this area, especially when we're looking at the parts management. You know, one of the things I keep seeing is the lack of visibility, for example. Is there a critical issue for companies, whether it's their field service operation, their aftermarket? What was the conversation you wanted to bring in?
Yes, our outset was really how does the environmental changes, not necessarily from a sustainability point of view, that's included, but also from the geopolitical situation with supply chains being affected and how that affects the resilience of the customers and working specifically in the aftermarket and service supply chain. So those were the topics. Yeah.
We really saw that, didn't we? I mean, I think I'm just waiting for the asteroid to hit on my bingo card for the last 5 years or so. We've had a pandemic, you know, we've got war, and we have seen supply chains absolutely tested to breaking points at certain points. I think resilience is going to be the fundamental buzzword that we need to... Buzzword's the wrong phrase. It's the word that we really need to be basing a huge amount of our strategic conversations around. What do you think? Do you think that that conversation is mature enough now? Were you seeing that companies have switched on to the urgency of the conversation?
Absolutely. There are some different aspects of this. Obviously, the resilience is about surviving. I mean, the new normal is not very normal if you compare to 5-6 years ago. So that is definitely a challenge for most people working, not just in service supply chain, but generally supply chain. But there are some learnings that we can pick up from the pandemic and other, like the Suez Canal incidents and so forth. And that is that resilience is becoming much more important for the customers. And one of the things that we have been picking up is that it's either redistribution or redesigning of the network. So a lot of customers that are coming from a centralized, you know, top to down, bottom to a more network-based lateral network. So that's one part, and the other part is refurbishment of parts.
Yes.
Which is an extra interesting thing, because the other ones we have seen before, you know, there's different trends. But the refurbishments of parts, I'd say to your earlier question is that we have been talking about sustainability and the need to change for, I mean, I've been in this industry almost 30 years, and I think that we have been talking about it at least for 20 years, and nothing has really happened. Yeah. In the field, on the ground, so to say. But that is changing now. It's definitely changing. So resilience is the trigger, but one of the main drivers is refurbishments of parts and the circular economy, and the customers are asking for it. So it's really business driven, not just from a regulation like the EU taxonomy and of course being a better world citizen as a as a company. But it's really business driven, and now things are changing and happening.
It's interesting you say that, because I absolutely agree. I think what we're seeing is multiple conversations leading to one fork in the road at the moment, or one position. You know, the conversation around servitization, the conversation around the circular economy, the conversation around ESG. You know, And one of the pieces that I've been writing about this for a number of years, and you're right, a lot of us have been having these conversations and we still see the same thing going over. But fundamentally, it's just great business practice.
Yes.
And this is the piece that I've been trying to push forward with the sustainability conversation and the circular economy, is actually we're delivering a better service for a lower cost. And all we have to do now is bring the technologies that we have in place and put some of the strategic thinking in. I'd love to get your thoughts on where you see the maturity of this at the moment in terms of the technological landscape. You know, because we're starting to get the conversation, I think. We're starting to understand where these are coming.
Well, we had the conversation for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the wider organisations, the wider industry is starting to see, and there are external drivers. There has been mass disruption. So we've suddenly got this momentum, but where are we in terms of the maturity from the technological space? Do you think we're just starting to scratch the surface, or are we starting to get some momentum?
It's an interesting question. I think so. So the short answer is: do we have the technology required to address these issues? Definitely.
Yeah.
That's not really the issue. I think that most customers, they are still struggling a little bit about, organizational aspects, organization, process, tools. So they're in organization and processes. But I also think that that's where the interesting thing right now is happening, because as the circular economy is being, one of the customers express themselves, is being pulled now. It's not being pushed.
Yes.
So there's a strong incentive, regardless of industry, of actually working towards a circular economy. But when we then look at the technology, is that a lot of the technology that are used today is based on, as an example, only historical demand to make a forecast. And when you have a very volatile supply chain, and on top of that, you're bringing in refurbished parts, which you may not or may have control over on the execution part, that brings a lot of new variability into the supply chain. And the technology, if you're only looking at historical data, for instance, that is not going to do the trick for you.
Well, it's like driving with your eyes in the rearview mirror. You have to have that kind of insight. You can't do it with just the historical. I
mean, it's a great analogy because you were able to do that in the past because we basically had a highway. Nobody were really expecting the road to change that much or to curve. But nowadays we are moving from a 3-lane highway that is pretty straight into a serpentine road up in the mountains where things are left turn, right turn, and looking at the rear view mirror, then it's not going to do the trick.
A bit more challenging. I just one final question for you, and I just wanted, this was just a thought that was coming into my mind there. So when we start thinking about the couple of things around parts, we know that. I'm going to build a case here. So we know that service revenue in general, depending on the industry, we know that service revenue is increasing, which I've seen up to 88% in certain instances. I've seen companies really struggling. We also know that generally parts makes up about 60 to 70, maybe even 80% of that revenue. What I've started observing, which touches into this conversation on circular economy, services evolved, so it's not just field service now. It's field service, or it's remote service, or it's bench reverse logistics type approach, and they all should sit alongside each other. Does that change how we need to think about parts? Because it's not just a case necessarily when we think of, say, remote service. It's not just a case of getting the right part to the right engineer for the right time, which is the old field service mantra. It may be that we need to get to the right parts to the customer, who is then advised by a remote technician. Do we have to start thinking about different things in terms of how we look at that inventory, how we know where these, if it's, like you said, the trigger for me was when you talked about refurbished parts and that additional there. Do we have to completely rethink a lot of this as we adapt, or can we apply the same learnings that we've done previously?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer shortly, but I think that there's a lot of aspects playing into this. So do we need to rethink a lot? To a certain extent, yes, absolutely. But there is technology out there that can that can help you. And I think the first thing is really to once you have the organization and processes in place, to really what is the single global truth.
Yeah.
You need to have something that brings things together from your different system, whether that be a planning system, an ERP, a warehouse management system, or your partners. You need to bring those together.
Right.
Once you have them together, then you have the possibility to make insights and understanding things. And you can then apply the new technology, like AI, for instance. The problem for most companies is that this data is it's unstructured.
Yes.
And it's not always available. So applying AI technology, I mean, it's a great technology. It's going to make a massive change for us in the in the long run. I'm confident of that, but the use cases are still limited. We have a couple of use cases within Baxter Planning that we have proven to work.
Oh, great. Okay.
But they are still. I mean, I can count them on one hand.
Well, these are the bleeding edge examples. Yeah.
But everyone is talking about hundreds of them, and that's difficult to obtain right now. But definitely, the new technology in the horizon is coming, and I think that to summarize it, I could say that the technology of yesterday is not going to fix the challenges of tomorrow. And I think that there is a merger of the classical aspects of process organization and tools, that the speed to synchronize these are faster now.
Yeah.
And I mean, to quote, I don't know who said it the first time, but I think it's fair to say that we are usually overestimating what's going to happen within the next 1 or 2 years, but we usually underestimate what's going to happen within the next 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly where we are at the pivotal point
Yes.
when it comes to technology.
Yeah. That, again, as I said right at the top, my job is very easy because I get to speak to very intelligent people like yourself that bring that great insight. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for shaping great conversations today. And thanks for talking to me towards the end.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.